So you don't want me to start, is that it?
It's a couple minutes. You don't mind, do you?
I just think it's kind of weird. I mean, if you got your food come first, I would say go ahead and start. What do I care?
Well, I would wait for you to get yours.
I really wouldn't want you to wait. I'd be uncomfortable if you waited.
Well, I'd feel it would be polite to wait for your food to arrive.
I think it's kind of impolite to prevent a person who's hungry from eating.
Yeah, but we're supposed to be having lunch together. I mean,
Well,
that's
we are
what I
having
bought.
lunch. What's the difference? Do we have to start at the exact same time? I don't get that.
Well, I don't see why you can't wait 2 seconds for your cold sandwich. It's not like it's even hot.
Well, I don't see why you care if I take a bite of my food. How does that bother you?
Because we're having lunch together.
So what?
The two of us.
Okay, here we are. We're on Season 2, Episode 5, The Thong, and I'm Susie Essman. Who are you?
I'm Jeff Garlin, one of America's top teens.
Absolutely, and we
Yes.
have a special guest with us today, Jeff.
Yes, we
Who
do.
is
Mr. Richard Lewis.
Mr. Richard
Thank
Lewis,
you
the
very much.
legend.
It's a pleasure to meet you both. I've never seen you before.
I love you, Richard.
I love you guys too. I love your show. What am I supposed to do now?
All right, now we're going to discuss the episode.
I know. I was fucking around.
And this, let me just say right up front, this episode was directed by none other than Jeff Garlin.
Yes.
How did that come about?
Well, it came about from me nudging Larry David over and over, and he was so reluctant. And
And what had you directed up until this point?
nothing.
Nothing.
Absolutely
I mean,
nothing.
you had directed stage stuff, but nothing.
Yes,
on film.
yes. I had, yes, no. By the way, in terms of a camera capturing something, this is the first time. And it meant the world to me because by him allowing me to direct, I was able to showcase that to be able to get money to shoot films. I shot 3 films, all of which have great moments and a lot of mediocrity.
And
But Jeff, didn't it help you to shoot something? You shot a lot of specials. You helped a lot of comedians.
Yes, I shot Dennis Leary's. I didn't shoot it. I co-directed it with Ted Demme.
But didn't that help you a little bit? I mean, you felt some
well,
confidence.
yeah, I watched. Yes, and Jon Stewart. Before Curb even started, I did Jon Stewart's Unleavened with Beth McCarthy. I like saying, because they did the cameras and I did the performance.
content.
Yeah.
Richard, have you ever directed?
Just craft services.
By the way, when you're there, craft services is so much better.
Well,
and by
because
the way,
I come in the morning before and go over what, green M&Ms, brown M&Ms.
by the way, my favorite thing you've ever done is the bowl full of lozenges. That's the best one.
So we start the episode, and Larry is in therapy.
Before we do, can we just discuss the mental institution backdrop you have? Susie, what is that?
That does look like a mental, but it's curtains because I see seat cushions behind there.
There's
There are
some things
curtains
we
blocking,
didn't tell you where we're doing this
but
from.
behind me are soundboards.
It's the Creedmoor podcast.
Yeah, this is like Bellevue production.
Now, here's the interesting thing that we start out with Larry in therapy, and
Right,
Larry is not a therapy guy. We're all therapy people. The 3 of us are all therapy people.
Big time. Yeah.
Lewis, I know you've, forever
Let
been.
me just chime in. When I was in therapy for about 40 years, and I was in this group therapy in New York when I started, and with this guy who became like the shrink to the comics, which sort of bugged me a little bit. But I got what it was. Just dig this. We drive to this. He had an office on the east side. You sit there for an hour and a half with 6 neurotic, whining people. And then after that hour and a half, first it took an hour. If I was in Jersey then, I'd drive to New York, try to find a space, go to the shrink. After the shrink with the 7 whining people, go to a little place to have something to eat. Then we had to go to an after group, and that wherever they lived, Staten Island, fucking Brooklyn, Guam, it was like an 8-hour deal. It was unbearable. So I somehow told Larry, he was always calling me with shit. I said, you got to come to this group. He came one night. We're sitting there, and he stands up. This is after the shrink. This is at someone's house. He's like, I don't need this. I don't need to hear this whining of all you bullshit. I'm out of here. And he started screaming and running out of this woman's apartment. And we chased him down York Avenue, well, First Avenue. And he hid in a phone booth like this. And all the ride Jews were going, waiting, Jew, waiting, Jew, waiting. And he was screaming, I'm never coming back. It was, I always said, Larry, why you didn't put that in anything? Well, whenever you tell Larry, Jeff, you know this.
Yeah.
Whenever you tell Larry, I had this moment that seems so right for you, he'll immediately go, no.
Do you know what? Do you know what I say to people who come up and pitch me?
Yeah.
You know, on the street or restaurant, I say, I don't even give Larry David ideas, and I'm an executive producer. Why would your idea be so great? I said, I've never heard a good one. And this is hundreds upon hundreds.
Oh, nonstop. Constant.
Nonstop.
Yeah.
But guess what? I say, I've never heard a good one. He goes, this will be the one you use. And guess what? Worse than the last one.
But you know what? What's interesting to me about that story is how dated it is because no more phone booths. Even Superman.
Right. That's true. This is 34
By the way,
years
the
ago.
only idea that we used up until the time, we never used anyone sort of outside ideas. David Feldman, for the restaurant,
very funny
came
man.
up with the thing about the numbers on the arm being from a Holocaust victim,
Really?
and it was his lottery numbers.
And that's next season.
Yeah.
We'll be discussing that.
Yeah.
That's season 3.
Yeah.
So Larry's sitting there talking in therapy about his gray sneakers, nonsense, just nothing. And the therapist says, let's get back to Cheryl. And Larry complains, we don't do anything together. She plays tennis, I play golf. And he's like, well, why don't you play tennis with her? Because she'll beat me every time because of my neck. She likes the outdoors. The therapist suggests, what about the beach? They'd be happy. So Larry decides he's going to go to the beach with Cheryl, and he hugs the therapist. They hug each other. Well, no, the therapist hugs him.
It was a pretty close. It was a good hug. He rarely touches skin or sweater.
But I have never hugged my
He actually
therapist.
put his arms around the therapist.
I hugged. I once went to a therapist. After 2 times she was doing such great work, I hugged her.
Yeah.
She pushed me off her and goes, why would you do that? And I said, I was just so emotional.
Yeah.
It was so.
She was right.
Oh, by the way, I concur.
Have you ever hugged your therapist, Richard?
I did more than that. That's why I can't.
Oh, God. Enough. I don't want to hear it.
Well, you asked.
I have never hugged my
I've
therapist.
kissed a therapist many times gently on the forehead and said, thank you.
No, you're not
It's
telling
making
the
out
truth.
in the balcony of the theater.
I had a strict Freudian. No hugs. Mm-hmm. No
on
hugs
the couch, lying on the couch.
Yeah, baby. Oh, yeah. For 10 years lying on the couch. That's why I'm normal. So Larry leaves the therapist, and Rob Reiner is in the waiting room. That to me was always a thing. Who's in the waiting room when you leave?
By the way, every time I've gone, I rarely go out and see people. There's always an exit.
Not always. It depends on where you are.
Most of the time.
Some are set up.
Yes.
Not in New York. They're not set up that way.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Because I remember when we were doing this, I questioned that. But then I also thought, what are they going to do? Have this conversation in the hallway? And there's a moment that's important in this scene besides Rob explaining things. And by the way, imagine Rob Reiner, we're about to say, because Larry walks in the waiting room and Rob Reiner's there, which, by the way, could happen to anyone. You go in the waiting room and it's Ben Vereen. Anyhow,
and there's always a relationship. There was like the person that was always after me on a Wednesday, let's say, and you go into a fantasy about this person. Who are they? What?
But my point was, so he goes out in the lobby. He sees Rob Reiner. Imagine my delight in seeing Rob Reiner working that episode. Because who do you think I turned to when I was stuck? I said, what if this comes up?
As a director, you mean?
So he was mentoring me while I'm directing and so kind about it. When I made my first movie, the very first scene I ever shot, Paul Mazursky is in the scene. He plays this producer.
That's a master.
And Paul Mazursky was so helpful, and he was literally in life one of my mentors.
No, that's great.
Biggest mentor.
And also, if I may add, played Norm. On later episodes of Curb.
Directed many a great movie, Bob Carroll, Ted Nellis.
Last Stop Greenwich Village.
Down and Out in Beverly Hills.
Was it Last Stop Greenwich Village? Or no.
Next Stop.
Whatever.
But I wanted to say, So when I was shooting the very first scene, my first shot, and Paul goes, "Can you give Jeff and I a minute here? Because I'm shaking. It's overwhelming. First movie." He pulls me aside. He goes, "This happened to me when I filmed Bob Carroll, Ted and Alice." He said, "My first, movie, I'm very, nervous." I think it was Surtees, the DP, I think that's who it was, said, "Come with me." And he pulls him up into a crane up above everybody. And he says, "How you doing?" And Paul says, "Good. Why'd you bring me up here?" "Oh, you needed a break." He goes, "Look at all those people. They want to help you. They don't want to judge you. No one's judging you.
Wow.
Just go do your best." And they went down, and he was calm, and that's what Paul did to me in my first movie, and
Beautiful.
I want to give him credit. All right, let's
Very
continue.
kind.
Sorry about the long
all right, that's
thing.
okay. So he runs into Rob in the waiting room, and Rob is doing a charity benefit thing for Grote syndrome.
Which, by the way, when Larry wrote it, he based it on the Dick Grote,
Yes,
second,
which
the
comes up
shortstop.
later.
I know, but he really wrote it based on that name. Okay.
And he wants Larry, which is a disorder of hyperactivity.
Yeah, like drinking 8 cups of coffee,
Right.
which would be, especially for someone with ADD, good luck world.
And he wants Larry to do a celebrity auction auction himself off to have lunch with. And Larry says,
First of all, I'm flattered that you would even think of me for this, but Rob, no one wants to have lunch with me.
Oh, no. You're the guy who created Seinfeld.
Yeah, but
people love to be
What?
sitting.
No one's going to bid any money. It's going to be embarrassing.
No,
They're going to have a Larry David lunch, 50 cents. It's ridiculous.
No. You'd be surprised at how much money we're going to be able to generate just by you agreeing to have lunch with them.
nobody wants to have lunch with me. Now, we've all done this. All three of us, I am sure, I've done it many times, have been auctioned off for a meal. Lewis, you have, I'm sure.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, and then also what I did to get out of the lunch thing was let them be, they auctioned, and it got a lot more money than a lunch with me, auctioned off a spot on Curb Your Enthusiasm, like $30,000 they'd make for their charity. And then I promised them that when they worked on the show, I'd have lunch with them. So it was very convenient. And I never...
Lunch on the set.
Yeah, the set. And I never, ever said Larry, or even the possibility of Larry joining us, which he did a couple times, but that's a long shot.
I think Curb had some charities years back where they, to meet some people that they give to the charity. And I had dinner with, I'm not going to mention them now, but turned out 2 very famous showrunner and her lawyer husband. And when I'm sitting there, I had, knowing how Larry comes off, like who would want to be with me, but you feel very uncomfortable. I immediately thought they were going to shoot me. I went right to the...
Well, by the way,
but I had an experience that was opposite. Somebody bought me a lunch for, I forgot what charity it was. It was some environmental. And it turned out we ended up being very good friends for a very long time. It turned out she was on the editorial board of the New York Times. She was a brilliant woman.
Was she Portuguese?
She was not Portuguese.
I'm just curious.
But she was a brilliant woman, and it was a surprising delight. But I've had many where it's like pulling teeth.
Do you know what I do to make it work at the end of the dinner? I lean over, kiss him gently on the forehead, and say, "That was something." And I leave.
Wow.
So Larry's afraid that it's a lot of pressure to be entertaining and blah, 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 blah.
But wait. There's something that's said in this scene which now would create a different reaction. He said, Tony Danza, and then he mentions Ted Danson is doing it.
Yes.
Now, current day Curb, he hears Ted Danson, he can't help fast enough. He wants to top Ted Danson always.
Now they're competitors.
They've been, that's one of the best stories on Curb. Is my favorite arguments are Richard and Larry, and my favorite, relationship is Ted and Larry. No, because Ted's the cad. Ted's the bad guy, which is so unlike his character.
Yeah.
True.
So then Larry goes to the bathroom to wash his hands, and the shrink is in there. And
insane.
the shrink will not speak to him. The shrink is just, he's pure Freudian, yet he'll hug.
Right.
But in the bathroom, he will not see him. He will not speak to him. And Larry starts talking about, I'm going to go to Santa Barbara. I think that's a good idea. Yeah.
I think that's a Santa Barbara thing. I think that's a pretty good idea. I think I'm going to do it. Go to Santa Barbara. One day.
But what do you guys think? What do you think, Jeff? What did you and Larry? What did the producers want the audience to take from that?
All right.
When,
well, we shot it about a half dozen times, and I knew it was wrong, but I didn't say anything. That was the therapist talked back to him, even if minimally. And I said, Larry, can we do one take, the last take, where, because I feel this is more real, that even though it's accentuated, he might have nodded or said
but he just ignores him completely.
And I said, Larry, I think you should be silent the whole way. He washes his hand next to you, you're opening up, you're going into what you already talked about, and he leaves, and then Larry, what the hell? But I'm sure when Larry thought about it, he was happy.
Yeah, it was funny that way.
Being a therapy guy, to me, I love that moment because it was like, the therapist is God in the session, but once you're out of the session, don't even talk about it.
Well, by the way, didn't you have ones that you saw at a party or something who didn't want to say hello? I had that.
That brings me back to my other story, which I don't want to get into for legal reasons.
Oh, look at you.
Now you piqued my interest, Richard.
But anyone knows, like Larry's not a therapy guy, but therapy people know that they put up a wall when they're out of the office. So I wanted to play it to the hilt.
Well,
and that's the one he used. He was very confused about that choice.
But I also think, Jeff, that choice plays into the subsequent.
Without a doubt.
Very much better than if he had been chatty.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So he goes home, tells Cheryl he wants to...
Hold on. There's another nuance moment that I caught, and I don't know if I'm responsible. When the therapist opens the door, very friendly with Rob, doesn't pay attention to Larry. And then later on, when Larry's going in, when Larry comes out and Richard's going in, same exact thing, welcoming to Richard, not acknowledging Larry anymore.
Well, he's done.
Yeah, I know.
He's done.
I love that scene, and we'll talk about it.
Our time is up. Larry goes home. He tells Cheryl he wants to go to Santa Barbara. Now, Anna brought up a point which occurred to me. They live in Malibu. Why are they schlepping to Santa Barbara to go to the beach?
Because that's what she probably wanted to do for a long time. And by the way, where did we film it? Malibu. All right, there you go.
So what about golf? Cheryl's thrilled. And Larry was so funny to me. You know how clueless. Well, what do? You bring a blanket?
Yeah, the questions about the beach were
What about
brilliant.
sunscreen?
But by the way, that's the exaggerated Larry David. There might be one thing that he wouldn't understand, but he
knows to bring a blanket.
That's if you want to know the difference between the Larry Davids, there's a slight exaggeration, sometimes a huge exaggeration with who he really is, but it's always an exaggeration. Well, later on, he says something that is totally Larry, but keep going.
They get to the beach. Where do I put a suit on? He's schlepping. He hates the schlepping.
The schlepping, that 30 seconds, it looked like if Larry David was a comic back in the 20s or 30s, like Chopper and Keaton.
Like a Buster Keaton.
That was that kind of physicality, which you don't see that often, like at least with Larry, I don't think.
Well, Larry's, and he's great at physical comedy also.
Yeah, more
absolutely
than
is.
The fight with you, the fighting with you, and in this episode there's a fight, but the fight with you by the jewelry store,
that's
great.
Right.
And also the episode we did 2 weeks ago, the car salesman, when he's fighting, where Richard comes in.
Yeah.
That's my wife's favorite scene. She makes us watch it.
That scene is unbelievable. It's so great. You're great in it, Richard, especially calling him out and being completely miffed.
And you say to him, which we mentioned when we did that episode. That was a couple of weeks ago. Who are you, Willie Loman?
Salesman?
Yeah. Who are you, Willie Loman? You say to him.
There's always those things.
Those Lewisisms, we call them Lewisisms.
The thing I love about the cast and the way this show is, and everyone plays it for real. It's like really, there's no false beats. Rarely ever I can ever think of any.
By the way,
mostly about a show that I'm part of, but that's what I love about it so much. I love Cassavetes, and it's very real, but drama and dark. We're like the flip side of that, but it's funny and screaming loud and laughing, but it's real. Everyone plays their character for real.
Well, by the way, comedy in general should be played real and as if you're doing a drama. You put a spin on anything comedic, it's dead. It's not funny.
Well, the way that we do it, the way I do it, and I think we all approach it this way, is we never try to be funny.
Ever.
You never try to be funny.
But by the way,
do the action.
You do it. But when you meet a lot of actors, you see actors trying to do comedy, really successful ones, and you just go, man, they're putting a spin on it. They're trying to be funny, and it's dead.
Let me just take this, because we have the infamous genius that he is, Richard Lewis. Let's just take a little second here to go back a little history with you and Larry. I know that you met in sleepaway camp. You hated each other. Then you re-met years later at the Improv at the bar and became instant friends. So how did he approach you about this part, about doing Curb?
Well, I was 50, and I was thinking about what I wanted to do. And I had under my belt a couple of dramatic turns on TV and a couple of films that I felt good about. I played a heroin addict in an independent movie, Drunks, and I had just done Leaving Las Vegas. It was 1C, but I felt proud to be in it. And I was thinking maybe after all these years of, at that point, 25, 30 years of stand-up, maybe I should not be Richard Lewis in anything again for a while. But when he came over to me and said, I'm doing this pilot, and Jeff was, I think, Jeff, didn't you produce it?
Yeah. I've been involved since the beginning.
And he told me about it, and I think this is just after HBO wanted to pick it up, and he came over and he said, listen, he came over to my house and said, I'm doing this show, and here's what I'm doing, and I'd like you to play yourself. And just for one torturous instant, I said, this is a Rubicon that I'm going to cross one way or the other. This is either going to be a great thing for me now at my age, or I'm going to just throw the dice and think I want to be more of a dramatic actor. And then I said, I'm standing next to Larry David, maybe the not Neil Simon, or the Norman Lear of our generation, and I'm going to say no to anything. The only request I had, I said, I'm in, but I don't want to just be like a cameo like Sammy Davis Jr. on All in the Family. Give me an arc. Give me at least 3 episodes. And he says, it's a deal. And I had 3 or 4, and we got, and the whole show got reviews that were like stunning on the first year. But it was the greatest decision I have ever made. I'm a comic. That's my deal, and I went that route.
By the way, while we're here, because he's only done this to me 3 times. Richard Lewis, you, and Bob Einstein asked me my opinion. And of course, Richard's one of my heroes. You, I adore. We've been friends since the 80s doing stand-up in New York. And Bob Einstein, who I didn't know.
You didn't?
No.
Neither did I.
I was almost on Super Dave. I almost played his sidekick in his USA Network Super Dave. They picked someone else. And him not knowing that was me, the other one, he got furious. But anyhow, he asked, you're the only 3 people he's ever asked to be on the show. That's it. In terms of friends and what have you. And then saying to me, you like this? How did he approach you?
He called me one day. I was sitting in my apartment, and he called me one day and just said, Susie, hi, it's LD. And I hadn't heard from him in years. I have the show. I think I told the story already, but I'll tell it again.
No, I don't remember.
I have the show. Well, I'm doing I want you to play Jeff Garlin's wife. And I said, well, send me the script. There's no script. Well, what's the character? Don't worry about it. You could do it. He said, there's no money. You have to do it for scale.
And you have to fly yourself.
And I remember saying, well, lad, I'm happy I'd love to work with you, but I'm not, because I lived in New York. I said, it can't cost me something to come work with you. At least fly me out, And then they found the money to fly me out. But we didn't know what it was.
Right.
Right, Richie? We didn't know what it was. Here we are 23 years later. 23 years later.
It's unbelievable. Sometimes I would run into the guest stars. If there weren't, they're all pretty well known. No, that's not true anymore. What am I saying? But early on, my trailer would be next to the guest star, and I would walk out, and a couple of times people would say, "What do I do? What am I saying?"
yeah, I know.
And I tried to be like, calm down. It's all going to be good. What do you tell them, Jeff?
Well, twice. I tell them the same thing.
Yeah,
I go, you can't make a mistake. We do it over and over until we get it, and you can say anything. You can say,
just have fun.
Just have fun.
Yeah.
However, two very well-known actors, twice this happened, threw up before they...
Really?
Yes. And I don't know if they do that in theater or movies, but for this, it was something new.
It might have been their process. For all we know.
No, but I think it was they were a wreck doing the style. Whereas all of us find this style, it fits like a glove. It fits like a glove.
Larry told me the other day on set, your name came up at Lewis, and he told me the other day on set that when you guys re-met as adults at the bar at the Improv, what year was that?
73 or 2.
Okay. He told me that you were instantaneously best friends. Right
out of the, once we realized that we knew each other 12 years before, and now we finally recognized that we knew each other, and then we really disliked one another.
As kids, you disliked one another as kids. It's like 12-year-old boys.
But it was like, how could this happen? It meant that there was a reason bigger than us. Some higher power of comedy put us together, and we were absolute best friends. I mean, best friends suddenly.
Yeah,
it was
that's
just
what he said. Yeah, I was like that with Joy. When Joy and I met in 1983, we were instantaneously best friends, and still are, almost 40 years later.
I was like that with Bob Denver.
Okay. Maynard G. Krebs?
No, Gilligan.
I know who he is. Also Maynard G. Krebs.
I know.
You're younger.
I know the groovy dude. I know it. On Dopey Gillis?
Yes.
Yes. No, Gilligan's Island, which I'd still watch an episode now if it's on. And
Jeff, I got to tell you, what I said about Larry, Susie said about Joy, I looked at your face. You don't know, your eyes start to twirl. And I went, this is not going to be fucking true. And I said, but don't blow up for Jeff. Don't shout out a name like Duke Snyder.
By the way, you would have come up with a better name. I'm sorry. You would. I should have.
Well, he's the master
I should
of
have
that.
paused and let you come up with a name.
that would have been so hip.
Yeah, I know.
So, all right, back to the episode. So he's schlepping the chairs, the blanket, the umbrella, the cooler. They're on the beach. Can I just comment, because I'm the woman in the group? Cheryl looks amazing in that bikini.
She does.
Two thoughts. Number one, Larry David was asked recently, what advice would you give your younger self? 2 trips. In other words, groceries.
Oh,
2 trips.
2
trips.
trips.
Don't try and do it in 1 trip.
And he doesn't get this fascination people have with the ocean.
Now that's real Larry David.
Yes, it is.
David. To look at the ocean and go,
I don't really get this fascination that people have with the ocean.
No?
Yeah. I mean, I stare at it for 10 minutes and I go, okay, I get it.
Don't you feel calmer?
I feel aggravated that I'm missing what other people are getting.
that's all I got to watch it. 10 minutes. Oh, I get it.
Yeah.
And that is real Larry.
Well, he's also said if you've seen one sunset, you've seen them all.
Yes. Yeah.
And then the moment comes. They're lying on the blanket. He's all sunblocked up, and he sees the shrink in a not just a Speedo.
No, it was a delight.
It was a stripe. It was a thong.
It was a ball sack too.
It was a ball sack. It was a sight to behold.
Well, Larry didn't see that at first. He saw the front and he was unsettled.
Right.
But then he dove down because he didn't.
Oh my God, who wants to see a shrink in a thong?
And then Cheryl sees the back, his thong bending over. Now, Larry didn't want to include that in the show.
Why not?
he didn't like it. He was embarrassed
that
by
his
it.
ass was showing?
He says too much.
Yeah.
And
well,
I
he's
said,
a prude in that way.
I know, but I said to him, people don't know this. It's my classic Larry David line. If you don't do that, I will wrestle you. I will wrestle you so hard and beat you. And he laughs and he gives in. And he included it, and it was a huge laugh in the episode.
And I think anybody who has been in therapy has that moment.
Oh.
You know, I mean, if I saw my shrink well, she was a woman, but if I saw her, it would be horrifying to me.
I saw
the judgment call. You have to question this person's judgment.
Yeah, it reminds me of when I was a little boy. I remember his name now, but I'm not going to say it. I had a history teacher in junior high, and he was wonderful, one of my favorite teachers. The next time I saw him, my family and I went out to dinner at a buffet place called Sweden House, and he was bussing tables at the same time. And so I wish I could have hit, but before that, now looking back, I wish I could. Do you know what I said to him? Mr. Wynn, how are you? I didn't question. I'm a boy.
You're a kid.
I did not question it. And by the way, God bless him. He actually reacted that way.
We have our image of these people. Like I remember seeing my principal in the summer in Bermuda shorts when I was a kid. And it blew my mind. He was always in a suit.
Were you wearing culottes?
I was probably wearing a skirt or culottes, but now he's in Bermuda. Once I saw my shrink walking into the office in a mink coat, which did not fit with her whole, she was like a hippy-dippy. It did, and it completely changed my image of her. You were not meant to see your shrink in a thong.
God, no. God, no. And by the way, I can't remember the actor's name, if you guys could research it, who played the therapist.
I have it written
down.
You do?
Yeah. But what a brave move.
Yeah.
By an actor of that age. He was clearly in his 50s, and not, an Adonis, to wear that bathing suit.
Yep. John Plachette. No relation to Suzanne.
Brilliant.
But he was also we've hired a lot of working character actors that I'd seen in a lot of TV and a lot of movies. And for him to wear that suit and bend over like that, oh my God, what a hero.
Brave.
Very brave. That's acting brave. People say, that performance, it was so brave. No, it wasn't brave. Wearing a thong like that on the beach, brave.
Really brave.
Then the question is, does he tell Richard Lewis about the thong? Because then we understand that Richard Lewis goes to the same shrink. And does he tell Richard? And that becomes a big conundrum for him. And he does, obviously. Next scene, it's you, Richie, it's you and Larry, and he tells you about the thong, and you're very upset about it.
You know what? This is so unfair of you. I turn you on to this guy. He's a brilliant doctor, but I would have never told you.
You should be thanking me. Saving you from this hedonist giving you advice.
Hedonist? He's a hedonist? He's not a hedonist.
What is it?
This is my 28th therapist since 1969. I don't want to go anymore. I don't want to break the fucking record.
The recap is very hard.
Yeah.
Your recap is 2-3 months, isn't it?
2-3 months?
For you to recap?
That's just the crib.
But you're upset about it because now you don't want this information.
Oh, I know I have to lead the guy too.
Exactly.
And now we got to figure out.
You say you've had 28 therapists.
Let's go to lunch and discuss it. To discuss termination at a lunch.
Right, and you didn't do it.
How could two guys be?
But you didn't do it because you were shocked later on that you weren't on the same page.
And you say to Larry, I've had 28 therapists since 1929, and to go through a new recap. The recap for you is hard, and then you
Larry
guys discuss.
Larry starts making fun of the recap.
Yes.
Now, have you had that many therapists? Because you've been going for a long time.
I had about 6 or 7.
Still.
Right, not 28.
Back when I just started comedy, my father passed away, and I went on stage to fill that hole. And I didn't have any money. And a friend of mine was a hospital, this will be brief, a hospital administrator.
Take your time.
So he said, you can come to, it was Queens Elmhurst Hospital. I was that time living in Jersey in some dump. But he said, it's $1 an hour. I went, whoa, $1 an hour. I could afford. So I drive 50 miles to Queens, to 40 miles, whatever the hell, from Jersey. And I have to interview with the head of the psychiatric department. And he gives me this standardized test. And I think my memory is screwed up now. Even back then, and he would say this, who's the Secretary of State? And I panicked. I went, Lou Costello. I just didn't know him. But and then he said, "Who's the UN ambassador?" Fay Ray. I don't care. and the thing that got me, he's writing everything down. Fay Ray, Lou Costello. So he asked me 20 of these, and I was pissed off. I said, "Look, my father just died. I've just started stand-up. I'm a wreck. I need to see a shrink." And he kept asking me, "Who is this? Who fought in World War I?"
What's the relevance of that?
By the way, you're making me feel better right now because I've had that since that age and probably before, where there's no way. And there's even obvious names, friends of mine.
Then Louis, you say something when you're discussing with Larry how to terminate. You say, which made me laugh.
How am I going to tell him I'm going to leave now? How am I going to tell him I'm going to leave now?
I don't know. Is it like a woman? Can you do it on the phone? Do you have to do it in person? What's the deal?
Not canceling cable. You have to go in. He's a human being. He's helped you.
You know, and the termination is always a big fucking thing with these therapists.
Deal.
They do not let you terminate.
They don't want...
Because the termination is resistance.
What did you say, Richard, about Roots? Do you remember?
Yes, that's later. Richard says, let's go to lunch and figure out a game plan how we're both going to terminate. Right. And Larry says he can't go to lunch because he's being auctioned off. And that's when Richard says, what is this, Roots?
Yeah.
Then I thought about slavery. There was a slavery reference.
Yes, we know. We got the reference. Thank you, darling.
I thought you needed to be, educated just for a brief moment.
Oh, my God, I love you.
God, I make a fool of myself every 30 seconds.
That's a typical Lewis reference, though, isn't it? That's such a Lewis. We've talked about on our previous episodes, we always point out the brilliant Lewis references that only you could come up with.
I'll accept.
They are. You better accept.
So now somebody's paying him $4,000. He's got to go. It's a lot of pressure, blah, 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 blah. So Larry shows up at the restaurant and he meets the person who bought him for $4,000, John Tyler.
Yeah, that's played by Tom McGowan.
Tom McGowan.
Very successful character actor. Very good friends of mine. I suggested
guy.
him, and everybody agreed. Yeah, great improv guy, great actor, and the nicest guy. Always saying somebody's sweet. A very sweet guy.
Well, you could see he's sweet by his face.
Yes.
And he was terrific in his disappointment.
And also not getting a thing that Larry is doing in this scene.
And by the
innocently.
way, I don't think Larry's behavior was so horrible.
No, because he was uncomfortable.
He was uncomfortable.
And
exactly.
he was
jolly. Tippy Canoe and Tyler too, and John Tyler the president.
And King David.
I'm related to King David. And ever catch your parents having sex?
Now that
by the way.
That came so out of left field, which made it so funny.
You ever catch your parents having sex?
No.
No, me either. You know they did, but you wonder when.
And then he went to, where are you from? I'm from Jersey.
Yeah.
You ever see Joe Piscopo, the Jersey guy? And then he starts doing an impression of Joe Piscopo during the Jersey guy.
And then playing the salt and pepper shakers and then he sings the Marilyn Monroe Happy Birthday, Mr. President.
Hold on, though. That is, to me, a sublime moment. He's sitting he's playing, you ever play on the salt shakers? And he's playing a song on the salt shakers. And you recognize it, Happy Birthday, simple. John Tyler does not recognize it. Right. And he goes, well, what is it? And Larry goes, Happy Birthday. He starts singing it regular. And then Larry suddenly goes into Marilyn Monroe. Larry David in person, Happy Birthday, Mr. President. And then he points at John Tyler. He made it about, I just thought that was magnificent.
That's magnificent.
Yeah.
What a segue.
Yeah.
Oh.
And then, of course, going into, he's got a terrific penis, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. And then about the dick growth. Then he starts in with the growth syndrome, which John Tyler's niece has growth syndrome. We've established that fact. And he goes into that he thinks it was named after Dick Groat, who was a shortstop for who?
The Pittsburgh Pirates.
For the Pirates.
I have his baseball card.
Okay. Then and clearly John Tyler is upset about the fact that he's thinking it's named after Dick Groat. And then the food comes.
Hold on. I have a thing that is for you guys and a handful of other people. So Larry and I wanted to put a comedian that we knew into the waiter's row. We asked the casting people to get us Mike Reynolds.
Yes.
Mike Reynolds, the comedian. And
sadly no longer here.
Yes, I love the guy. And that man comes over. That scene, Larry and I weren't prepared. Your food will be coming. Older gentleman, totally miscast as a waiter. And we both asked, what happened to Mike Reynolds? She booked the wrong Mike Reynolds.
His name was Mike Reynolds.
Yes, and I've never forgotten that. We were just like, oh
Poor
my.
Mike Reynolds.
Yeah, I know.
Great guy. And then Larry's food comes, and he wants to begin, but John Tyler's food is not here. Do we have to start at the same time? A typical Larryism.
And by the way, when that started, in rewatching it, I knew it was over. The lunch would end shortly, because when Larry says something negative to somebody, it's only going to build.
Yeah.
You know? Because usually it's curious, but this is curious mixed with anger. Keep going.
So that scene is ended, and then we're in the waiting room again of the shrink. When you know that Larry is going to try to terminate, and Rob comes out. Right? The shrink only has Rob, Lewis, and Larry as
but it's tied
clients.
In. And by the way, did you notice they switched times?
They switched times.
That happens on occasion.
Rob comes out. What's happened? And Larry's like, I tried to be affable. That's such a Larry thing. I tried to be affable. I felt pressure. And Rob's like, didn't you read any of the literature? And you start eating. And
hold on, wait. Larry says, I find that stuff depressing.
Yes,
That's
I
why
find that stuff depressing.
And then also, he says to him, well, Dick wrote, the shortstop for the Pirates. And he says, what are you doing, Grote? The name's not named after him. He goes, Lou Gehrig has a disease.
And he's right about that.
Yeah.
He does have a disease, did. And you start eating. And so as Rob starts going through the litany of everything that Larry did wrong, and says the guy's going to cancel the check because he had such a miserable time. And he says the only way that he could...
Wait.
Rob says, you need to get more involved with Groats.
Well, hold on. There's a term. So Larry does ask, because when I'm watching this now, I'm going, why isn't he asking, can I write a check to get out of it?
He did ask
that.
that.
So he did ask that, but it was a while. And the thing that Rob Reiner said that I wrote down, which God bless him for improvising this.
Larry, that's not the point. It's not just giving money. It's getting involved, in Groats. It's being, Groats active.
You need to start being more Groats active. That was the phrase he used. And brilliant. I just
and he talks him into doing a talent show for the people with Groats, for hosting a talent show. And then... but
at that moment as a Curb fan, that's gonna be hell.
By the way, it's like I've mentioned before, Nat Hiken. I have to always explain. I have to explain to you, Richard. Nat Hiken, by the way, for those of you who are listening and haven't listened to all of them, he's Sergeant Bill Coe and Car 54. Two of my favorite things. And he's the only writer that Larry resembles, because they start like they have those domino things on the puzzle talk shows, where you hit the domino and it goes in different directions and then it meets together at the end. That's how Nat Hiken wrote, and that's how Larry David wrote. All paths lead to the moment that wraps it up.
And everything in the script, in the episode, in the filming of it, has to be pushing the story forward.
Right.
So it's not just funny for funny's sake. No. It has to be moving. It's all story. Has to be moving the story forward. So Larry agrees that he's going to do the Groats talent show, and then the shrink interrupts, and Larry sits down and has big news. I think I'm all better.
Which there's nothing
I had an
funny. Epiphany. And then he goes, you're doing, and then I think maybe for the first time ever in this scene, he says,
I think I'm all better.
Really?
I'm feeling pretty good. Pretty good.
Pretty good.
Now, Anna asked, I think so too, and Anna asked, where did that come from? Was that a Larry thing before that?
I never heard it. Richard, have you ever heard him say that?
Or
I haven't.
Did that become a Curb thing?
I think he just improvised it in the moment. You know he didn't plan to say that.
Right.
None of us plan except for someone who's on the
I
screen.
never heard him say that.
Okay, but you're our only planner.
You're
but
the
you
only
don't do it
planner.
anymore. But remember, you'd put an index card like by the salt shaker if Larry and I are having lunch, and then Larry or I, right before they said speed, so we knew we pulled the card away, and you used to get so mad at us. But you were brilliant, so
I
we
did
knew
it
you
once
were.
or twice. I wanted to come through.
Once or twice.
Once or twice, Richie.
Okay,
Come
whatever.
on, man. This is
All
us
right.
you're talking to,
Yes.
baby.
Yes.
So, all right. So, the shrink says, Larry says
No,
on the
hold on,
Terminator.
let me just say, I said this before in person. My rationale for having a couple of things in my head before the scene was that I would say to myself, gee, Larry wrote this story. For 5-6 months, he's been ruminating about it. How could he's not going to stop thoughts from coming into his head. I deserve a couple of ad libs in my head just in case it
Well,
works.
they need to
He
stay.
has a
no
point.
rationale.
He has a point.
By the way, they should be in his head. And I also want to say, though I've been guilty of it, when you prep a line that you're going to say, unless you think of it in the beat before, it's never going to work.
Never going to
I
work.
never prep a line, but I'll have things in my head.
Well, your performance
Yeah.
is really about the things in your
I'll
head.
have things in my head
And
that
believe
are,
it or not, she is different in every take except for one moment, the get out. When you tell Larry
yes.
to get out, that is a consistency. And we just filmed one the other day, and Larry laughs as hard as he ever did. But that one you do letter perfect every single time.
But there are things that I mean, when I read the outline, there's stuff that goes on. You know what I mean? Whatever.
Yeah.
So Larry says, I'm the Terminator, and the shrink says, was it the beach, Larry?
And you know the way he says it, he knows.
He knows
Larry
about
doesn't
the
pick
thong.
up on it,
Yeah.
but he knows.
And
damn
Larry
well.
lies.
Yeah.
I didn't go to the beach, which is, that's the first mistake. Because he doesn't know that he didn't turn at an inadvertent moment and see Larry when he didn't see him. He doesn't know any of this.
Well, that's
I
common
went shopping
sense.
with my wife.
Yeah.
I didn't get, and the shrink looks very, very suspicious. And Larry's, I could come back intermittently when I have a thing, but I'm
By
great.
the way, I love if you'll have me.
If you'll have me.
I'd like to come back intermittently if you'll have me. Oh
and
my
then
God.
see how
Oh,
the
and
shrink
he says, I'd like to get a refresher course every once in a while.
And the shrink says, you seem agitated. What about the Jason Alexander issue? You seem agitated. No. And Larry says, you're seeing ebullience.
Ebullience, you're mistaken.
Ebullience.
By the way, how about this one? Yes, I'm sad and frustrated by it. If you bring up the Holocaust right now, what kind of reaction are you going to see? Which is a great line.
And then Larry says, I'm a hammock just gently flowing in the breeze.
Yeah.
And you're such a good therapist that you're a victim of your own talents and skills, he tells the guy. And then the shrink says, I know you were at the beach, Larry. So it has nothing to do with the thong.
Yeah, Larry died in that moment. He was dead. And
he was dead.
And it was so wonderful to watch.
And then he walks out, and who's in the waiting room?
Richard.
And Larry's like, he's on to us. He knows about the thong. And Larry figures that John Tyler told Rob, because Larry, we didn't mention, Larry told John Tyler in the lunch about the thong.
No, but he figures out the puzzle. How did he know? Told John Tyler, who told
Rob Reiner,
who talked
and Rob
about
Reiner
therapy.
told the therapist.
Yes.
So what happened? How do you out it? Are you out of it?
I'm out, yeah.
How?
I told him I was happy and I didn't need the therapy.
You told him what?
I told him I was happy.
That's what I'm telling him. How can you steal my
I didn't
termination?
share your termination. I didn't know you were going to say you were happy. We never discussed that.
How else am I going to leave a shrink?
What the fuck do I know?
You say I'm miserable, I'm suicidal, I want to leave?
I don't know.
So what am I going to do?
Tell him you're a Scientologist or something.
How could you steal my termination?
Yeah, I was instantaneously into the panic mode, like the
But it was so beautiful, Richard. It was so beautiful and completely believable that
You're
would be
stealing my termination.
Yeah.
It's hilarious.
Yeah.
And then Larry says, tell him you're a Scientologist. Where the fuck he got that one from? I don't know.
Me.
I'm a therapy person, I think I said. I'm not a scientist.
Yeah.
Then he tells me to watch that movie.
Battlestar
But
Galactica.
hold on. Richard, you sang the first line, and people might not notice it. Where did you get that fabric? You're feeling his shirt, questioning the fabric.
No, let me just set
That's
that
after
up.
the shrink
Because
comes.
the shrink comes out.
Yeah, and they have to
then
pretend.
they have to pretend. So that's when you...
And by the way, the Battlestar Galactica came from, I suggested it because there was a movie with John Travolta that was a Scientologist movie. It's all Scientology. Right. Big sci-fi movie. Huge bomb. And so Larry was trying to do a reference for a thing in the movie, and I said to Larry, just say Battlestar Galactica. Yeah. It'll work. Battlestar Galactica.
What was Battlestar Galactica?
There were two versions. There was one in the 70s with Lauren Green on ABC, I believe. And then there was one on, I believe, the Sci-Fi Channel that was scary as can be with Edward James Olmos. And it was every episode, I had to shake it off.
So when you're just talking about the Battlestar thing, there's a beautiful thread from the beginning of this series through now that Larry, as much affection as we have for each other, he'll always do like this, an ad lib directed towards me that's sort of negative.
Dig.
Like, oh, you're going to watch that piece of crap, or you're going to, and I have to defend myself or say, what are you talking about? I mean, he's always putting me on the defensive, which I love.
He's very judgmental of you.
That's what I
More
meant.
than anybody on the show.
Yes. And then, so that's that scene. And then we cut to the talent show. And Larry's
Last
emceeing.
scene of the show.
And what does he say? The Groats Laboratories?
Yeah, and the Groats
coming up with
Laboratories.
the cure for baldness.
For baldness. And then he sort of does a whole thing about enthusiasm with baldness. And then he closes out with his professor voice.
So watch out, bald people. Your day's coming. Don't give up hope. Keep hope alive. You must keep hope alive, bald people.
Keep your hope up, bald men, everywhere. The Groats people are going to take care of it. And then you cut to the audience, and they're all in disbelief. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Yeah.
And then he brings out Melanie Tyler, who is the niece of John Tyler, and she starts playing what is she playing? Fleur de Lis, I think?
Yeah, Fleur de Lis,
And
when you see Tyler in the audience, it's right away the audience just go, there's trouble
Here
brewing.
we go. And she starts all of a sudden freaking out and playing really fast, and Larry feels as though he's standing in the back with Bob Whitey next to him, one of our directors of the show, and he feels that he has to go out and save. Again, Larry trying, no good deed goes unpunished. That's his mantra.
And by the way,
tries
if he
to do a
took a
good thing.
beat, he should say to himself, how am I helping things by going out and getting her? Let her play fast. Let her go off the rails. Yeah. That's none of my concern. Instead, he doesn't take a beat to consider, and he runs out.
And once again, a physical altercation.
But before that, he goes, how about, I forget her name, how about
Melanie Tyler.
And a big applause comes. And if it was just that, and she kept playing, he also could go, all right, I'm going to step back. So he had an opportunity.
Yeah. But
no siree, Bob.
And a physical altercation, which he loves the physical I've had them with him. I don't think you ever have, Jeff, have you?
Who?
You and Larry had a physical Lewis has had many.
No. And as a matter of fact, our moments are unique to us and not how he treats other characters. The one time we tried it, which I'll talk about later on, but I'll say right now, we tried one of the eye things, the long staring eye things.
Yeah.
I know. It didn't work so fucking hard because the way I look at it, and we discussed it, we both know if the other one's lying. There's not a moment where you go, because we say to each other, you're full of shit.
And
that's
you know
bullshit.
what? You know what's interesting? I've only had one of those with him.
Right.
Only one in all of the
yours
seasons.
is naturally funny because we know that you're thinking he's full of shit.
I always know he's full of shit.
Yeah.
And then the episode ends, and there we are with The Thong, directed by Jeff Garlin, starring Richard Lewis.
I was so honored. I never did it again on the show, but I was so honored to be able to do that. And I said to Larry, I know it wasn't easy for you. He doesn't like being directed by a castmate.
Yeah.
All the directors are
separate
things. And I said, I know how hard it was for you, and I can't tell you how much I thank you. I so appreciate it. Yeah. That's the reaction. Yeah, sure. All right, good.
And
he meant it. And by the way, he meant it. He was happy that I said that.
But he's not, ebullient.
And
it only happened watching one, maybe just you and Cheryl Hines. That's it, for the whole 22 years. Am I wrong?
What? Being there?
Cast member directing, other than you and Cheryl?
Susie came early on.
No, he's asking directing. Cheryl directed one episode.
She did.
Later on, season 9, I believe.
But that being said, she was not in that season. She was not in that
episode.
That season.
She wasn't. But was there anybody else? I think you're right, Louis. There's nobody else.
No one else.
That's it.
And I had to
it's only happened
by
twice.
The way, can I say for the record, I had to bother him. And I'm sure Cheryl said, Larry, I want to direct. And he said, oh, okay. I'm sure she didn't have to work hard at all, because she's hard to say no to. She's so adorable.
It has been our great thrill and pleasure, Jeff,
yes.
to have Richard Lewis as our guest today.
It was, Richard, anytime spent with you is a time well spent.
And we're going to spend a lot of time together very soon.
And by the way, I want to add this. He's one of the people that when I'm shooting a scene with him, inside my mind, I go, wow, I'm doing a scene with Richard Lewis. Because you have to understand, I watched him for years
we all did.
Before I became a comedian, and I was like, what is this guy? Who is this guy? He's amazing. And then remember, Richard, I told you, what was the name of the Diary of a Comedian? Was that the name of the film?
Diary of a Young Comic.
Diary of a Young Comic. And get this.
Tell them what Diary of a Young Comic is. Tell the audience.
It was an hour and a half movie. I would start in Saturday Night Live.
Yes, Saturday Night Live wasn't out. Didn't do an episode that week. And replacing it all across the country was a movie about a comedian starring Richard Lewis. And I thought, and you were great in that, because it was funny, but it was so dramatic. And I went, this is the guy. So to this day, I appreciate it.
And Louis, Louis, what's our beef, yours and mine? We have never, in all of these seasons, had a scene together.
You're shut up.
We've had scenes where we're at a dinner party, but we've never had an interaction with each other.
Oh, yeah, but the dinner parties,
we used to tour, all of us toured together. And
and we toured together. Yeah. Susie, Richard, and myself.
And Leon on occasion. And then Leon, we came up with, I don't know, doesn't matter what we came up with, we called Larry the Hog, because we never had a scene together, ever. But it's so, there's no complaints. And it's hard for me to accept praise like that, but I will, and I love you both.
We love you, Richard.
Thank you. We love you.
And we're going to see you shooting very soon, because as the audience should know,
and
we're in the middle of
season 12. And by the way, I also want to add, when I tell the number one thing that people ask me when I tell them we're shooting another season is Richard in it.
Is Richard in it? I get asked
that
all the time.
That's a big one. Is Richard in it? Yeah.
Well, a couple of surgeries knocked me out for most of last season, but I'm back now, so it's great.
You're back, baby, stronger and better than ever.
By the way, still a big bowl of handsome. We've talked about in these episodes how handsome you are.
Go on the pad.
No, shut up.
All right.
I don't know if I turn this computer off. Who does it? I don't want to reject you.
Don't worry about
Richard,
it. We're secure in your love.
You need to do what you do on phone conversations. You say something funny, and then you bink. So, anytime.
I stole that from down the shore.
You see, he's gone.
He's gone.
That's what he does. You're talking to him on the phone.
I know.
And he'll say something really funny that kills you, and then he's gone.
And we're gone. This episode is over, and we'll see you next time.
I'm going to be abrasive and not say anything, even though I just said something.
Mwah.
Bye. Thank you.